Welcome everybody to episode 6 of Inside the Designer Studio. We present here personalities and designers from the audio world. My name is Veronica Diaz and my dear co-host is Elliot Goldman. And Elliot, good morning, how are you? We have a very special guest today. But before we start, I'd like to invite you to please like and subscribe to our channel so you can get notifications of all the new videos that we're having every week. Elliot.
It's nice to see you. It's nice to be back from Expona and almost 100% and got my truck unloaded and my room back up and my back feeling a little bit better. We have a special guest today. I want to welcome Alan Eichenbaum from the Sena Speaker Company. Alan and I have known each other for probably longer than I care to imagine, but certainly over 20 years. And I will say before we start that Alan is a very good friend of mine. And even though we don't do business together, his company makes I think, a really wonderful speaker. And I did run into him for a few minutes at Expona while we were both setting up, and that's as much as the show is probably both of us see as we have to work the room. So good morning, Alan. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about you and Sena?
Sure. My name's Alan Eichenbaum. I am one of the principals of Sena Loudspeakers along with my partner, Sonny Umaral. We started Sena Loudspeakers in 2004. Took us about almost 3 years to get a product to market, which we debuted at CES in 2007. And we've been making line arrays, line sources for 15 years now. And I'm not technically a designer. Most of the design work is done by my partner, but I do most of the voicing and listening to the loudspeaker and listening, unfortunately, to things like parts and resistors and capacitors and things that tend to make a difference in the sound of a loudspeaker.
All the fun stuff.
And Alan, what makes the isolinear array of your speakers so special?
Well, one of the things that we do differently than pretty much every line source loudspeaker that I'm aware of on the market is that each one of our mid-range drivers, which basically covers most of the frequency spectrum, is in an isolated enclosure. So for instance, in our 12 mid-range speaker, we have 12 different enclosures. The reason for that primarily is every loudspeaker has a front wave and a back wave. And when you have multiple drivers in one enclosure, you're dealing with, for instance, with our 12 mid-range speaker, 12 different back waves. We're able to dissipate those back waves and take them out of the presentation by having a unique enclosure, individual enclosures, and the shape of the enclosure.
And it looks cool too.
Yeah,
it's definitely form follows function though.
Right. So Alan, why don't we start a little questionnaire and we can get some other ones. Sure. What sound do you love?
Sound. Are we talking about reproduced sound or are we talking about music in general?
Any sound that you love. Could be anything. Don't overthink.
Well, I think like most human beings, our appreciation of sound is not necessarily limited to music. There are sounds in nature and in life that are musical and pleasant, and then there are sounds that are unpleasant. So I would say I tend to like things that are pleasant to my ear, that cause me to have an emotional response or connection. And that's a lot of different things. It could be the sound of running water. It could be the sound of an orchestra, a jazz quartet. It's very many things that I think I can relate to.
And you mentioned that some of these other sounds are unpleasant. So is there a sound that you absolutely hate for any reason?
I don't like jet engines. And I don't like in reproduced sound, I don't like anything that has a lot of high frequency hash or noise. I find that offensive to me personally. It just bothers my ears and my brain. Not everybody's as sensitive to that, but that's something that I find very difficult to listen to. No matter what else it does correctly, if the high frequencies are hashy or a electronic sounding, I find it very offensive.
You want to go? All right. I already know the answer to this question, but I'll ask it anyway. What profession would you like to be doing if you weren't in the audio business?
Well, as you know, I've been practicing law for 44 years. But if I wasn't a lawyer and I wasn't involved in audio, I would probably want to be an architect. I like creating things. I like designing things. So that's probably the profession I would have chosen.
Okay. I just want to ask a follow-up to this because I know your background, but a lot of other people did. So how did you get from being a successful attorney to getting involved in the audio business?
So I've always been involved in the love of music and the love of audio. For instance, I was the labor counsel for the Florida Philharmonic for 2 years prior to them folding. I was always involved in doing legal work for either audio salons or, for instance, for an audio speaker manufacturer. So from there, my involvement as a buyer and a legal representative morphed into meeting with two other people, Sonny Umrau and the late George Bischoff, and we decided to form SANA in, like I said, in 2004.
Okay, great.
Great. Well, I always ask this question, but what do you think about the wife acceptance factor? And in the case of the loudspeakers that you manage and produce, is that something that you take into consideration?
Well, we don't take it into consideration in our design because we can't, because we're basically, as I said, form follows function. We're doing this in a way, and unfortunately, when you make line sources, they're large by nature. There's no
We lost him.
such thing as a small one. I don't know that it's just a wife acceptance factor. I think we live in a world today where people tend to want a more sterile environment, even in their kitchens. They don't want a lot of things on counters. So we're living in a time where a lot of interior decorating is a little more Spartan. That makes it tough for manufacturers of large loudspeakers. But it's something we have to deal with. A lot of our customers, fortunately, have either dedicated rooms or they have a space where they can set up the system.
I get it.
Okay, Alan, so do you have an idol or a hero in the audio world? And if so, who and why?
Yeah, I mean, I have people that I greatly admire. I don't know that I would use the word hero. I kind of reserve that for people that do other things, but I would say one of my people that I greatly admire is William Zane Johnson, Bill Johnson of Audio Research. I think without the perpetuation of tube amps, I'm not sure how far we would have come in high-end audio. And I say that because tube amps were able at the time, singularly, because I don't believe solid state was able to do that, they were able to recreate many of the things that we value in a high-end audio system. Other than that, I would say my greatest admiration is for the late Harry Pearson. Harry just moved the bar. Harry was able to not only identify commissions in a system, things that are obviously wrong, like high frequency hash or a solid state glare that we had primarily, in the early days of solid state. But he was really, really exceptional at identifying omissions, the things that a stereo system did not do, things that the average person might not notice, things that we now kind of demand and are looking for in our audio systems. So I think that his contribution was unbelievably important.
Nice. And what do you think is the biggest myth in high performance audio?
Well, I've always thought this to be true, and it's been confirmed by attendance at audio shows. I think the biggest misconception that I hear from friends and people that are uninitiated is I won't be able to hear the difference. I think that's the largest myth that the average person in the public has about high-end audio systems. And when they get in front of one and it's properly set up and it's really rocking or giving you that emotional connection, people get it immediately, even if it's their first time that they've been exposed. And I think that's a great myth. And I think it's one that the high-end audio industry has not been very good at overcoming.
Mhm.
I really agree with you. I mean, Alan and I have talked about this before. There's a really big difference between the ability to hear and the skill of listening. And I think that one does not preclude the other. The fact is that I think listening is a learned skill. But having said that, and I think it's true in other sectors too. I mean, if you have something in front of you and it tastes bad and something that tastes good, okay, that most people can differentiate the fact that one is the other, whether they think it's the best, quote unquote, whatever it is in the world or not, is really irrelevant. But the fact that they hear something that they can connect to, and they realize that there's something more than what they would get out of earbuds or a car stereo, is really evident. And I totally agree with you. When people sit down and hear something really good, they get emotionally involved with it. And hopefully it encourages them to look at other things and, maybe to even aspire to own it.
Right, and the amount of details that you can get when you improve a system, suddenly is discovering new information that you never knew it was in that track that you always loved. Suddenly it's the strings, or it's going to be a drum or something in the background. And it's so rich. So I totally agree with you. We can hear the difference in many, many ways.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think a lot of people get really blown away when they sit down in front of something and the speakers disappear for them. And I think that most people are kind of shocked by that. Don't you agree, Alan, that they sit down, particularly with a speaker like yours, where you sit down and the speakers are gone and the walls are gone and the room is gone, and they're not expecting that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Anybody that goes to live music, they're having a connection to the music and the musicians in a way that they have never experienced unless they've been in the presence of a high-end audio system, because you don't get that in the car. I mean, look, you can enjoy music in the car. I do, millions of people do, but it's not the same type of connection that you can make in live music. And what we're all trying to do, at least that's what I'm looking for when I listen. I'm trying to recreate the feelings and the experience I have when I'm in the presence of live music. I want to have that emotional connection to the reproduced sound in the same way that I do in live music, because that's what the purpose of getting and listening to live music. We make a connection that we don't make in any other forum.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I was reading your bio and your webpage, and it says that one of the things that you do is actually sit down and listen critically, so you can suggest improvements, among other things that you do. So my question for you is how you keep that hearing fresh, so you can hear from the perspective of someone new to your products, at the same time being an expert. How do you manage to do that?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, not one I've really thought about. I don't know that we factor into it what other people might hear. I think we first, do the technical part, and then we try to compare that to what we believe the sound of real instruments are in a real acoustic space. And that's basically our measurement, and that doesn't really change. So I'm not sure we factor in anything other than that.
Cool. Okay, so Alan, it's your, and I don't wish you any harm, it's your last evening on Earth. What are you eating, and what piece of music are you going to listen to?
Ooh, the eating is easier than the music. Eating would be, do I have to pick just one, or can I have two? I pick bacon first and followed by pizza. Music, wow, that's really tough. Probably my favorite artist for just the lyrics and the poetry and music is Joni Mitchell. So probably something from Joni would be my last piece of music.
Cool.
I could probably go with A Case of You, probably one of my favorite songs in the entire world.
As long as it's not done by Diana Krall, I'm okay.
She does a pretty nice job if you ask
No, I
me.
know that, but it's just so overplayed. That's all.
Because
No,
you
but
came
no-
from a trade show. That's what happens.
Yeah,
More
yes.
bias.
That's a great recording, but there's nobody's Joni. She's one of a kind.
Oh, Alan, where do you see yourself or your company in 5 years from now?
Oh, boy, it's a hard thing to predict what the market will be for high-end audio systems in 5 years. I'm hoping that we can attract more young people and kind of get them away from the mobile listening that they do and the multitask listening that they do, because it's kind of the enemy of our type of business. To really enjoy what we produce, what the high-end audio community produces, it requires some level of focus and concentration and dedication, just like you would do if you were in the presence of live music. You wouldn't be on your phone and texting and Twitter and all of the other things that distract people today. So I'm hoping that we can kind of curb some of that. As far as our product, we've basically been making the same product for 15 years. Every change we've made to our product has been available as an upgrade to all of our customers. So I don't think that we're going to differ from that pattern. That's what we intend to do, and we've been doing it for 15 years.
One of the things about that, and you and I have not talked about this, but I think it's kind of interesting. We all want to bring new people or expose our stuff to young people, but I really, and maybe I'm wrong, but the way I see things is that, unfortunately, I think a lot of people can't separate the technology that's available to them with the ability to participate. And what I mean by that is, you go to a concert and everybody does have their phone up taking video, and they do have this thing. And I think that music is something, it is, in my opinion, something that you need to participate and not be a voyeur. And I see a lot more of voyeurism in our world today where, in other words, like, people watch videos of people cooking food. I want to eat the food. I don't want to, I don't want to watch the video of it. I mean, they post videos of stereo systems. I really have a tough time wrapping my head around that, other than as a marketing tool or an advertising tool. Taking this and recording somebody's speaker, to me, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I think that's one of the things that technology has really messed up people, is that they've become more watchers and less participants. And obviously, whether it's live music or recorded music, I think you have to be present and you have to participate in order to appreciate it. It's fun to, go for a run with a set of earbuds or go to the gym or whatever, but that's really not the same thing that any of us in the industry are actually trying to accomplish. We are trying to accomplish those feelings and emotions of seeing somebody perform music.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Completely. We are living in a society where multitasking, I think, diminishes some of the enjoyment that you would get from one particular task. At least I find that. I don't think the brain can equally do 7 things at once.
I agree. I mean, I see this with my own kids and younger people that I come across. It's really hard sometimes to even have a conversation with them because they're so involved with whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever it is. And I think that
Elliot, we're sounding like 2 old guys.
Yeah, I know we sound like 2 of us, but I since we started this, I just wanted to make the point. I think that it's really unhealthy. And I think that it takes away a lot of the enjoyment of life. It's sort of like everybody wants to be, like I said, a voyeur rather than a participant. And you can't live, or at least I can't, or I don't want to live my life online. I want to live my life in reality. And although this is fun and, it's nice to see you because, you're now 8.5 hours away from me. So it's tough for us to play golf a lot anymore or see each other that often. And Veronica's in Massachusetts. So this is kind of the only way I get to see her other than a show. And it serves a purpose. But I hope, sincerely hope that my life and your life and Veronica's life is much richer than just these little squares on a computer screen. Anyway, enough of my preaching for today.
There is no substitute to life interaction. That I agree, but I appreciate the fact that I am able to talk to you and use technology today to be able to have this connection, and it feels like the next best thing. So I appreciate that.
I mean, it's a useful tool. It just doesn't take care of everything. Anyway, I want to thank Alan for joining us today. And if you have any closing words, I'll give you the floor, and then I'll let Veronica wrap it up.
No, I don't. I hope that the industry flourishes, because I think people are missing out on a wonderful experience. And, music is an incredible, part of life. Plato said music gives soul to the universe and wings to the mind. And, music's been a part of humankind for thousands of years.
Right, I totally agree. Well, I hope to see you after I get back from Germany and Munich. And Veronica, why don't you close the show?
Right. Well, again, thank you very much, Ellen. Thank you, Elliot. And thanks everybody for watching this episode of Inside the Designer Studio. I remind you to please like and subscribe the video and click on the bell so you can get notifications when we are releasing other videos for you. Stay tuned and see you next time. Thank you very much, everybody.